Welcome back. Business Morning is an interactive business program. Let's get your thoughts and contributions on the show. Tweet at Channels TV, at Biz Morning, at CTV Harriet, and at BBosin, or send an email to businessmorning@channelstv.com. Let's get conversations ongoing, and we're continuing our focus on the markets, turning our attention now to developments in Nigeria's energy markets. Let's bring in business news editor, Channel's business news editor, Person Omofaye. Great to have you back on the show, and welcome back from a very interesting weekend.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. A very interesting weekend. You can say that.
So, interesting for the economy and interesting personally. Give us your experience coming to work today. It's been a very tight time for most people because the queues are back on the street, and a lot of fueling stations, most of fueling stations are closed because they don't have the products to sell. And so those who have the products actually have unending queues of cars, motorists, those who even want to buy in their jerry cans, invading the petrol stations.
Yes, I guess that's the experience on the streets right now, and folks are scratching their head all over as to where did this problem come from when everybody thought that we've been able to put this behind us. If I may go back a little bit towards the end of last year and early January, when the NNPC says that the 4 local refineries had been fixed and that they are now up and running, some million liters of petrol had been produced on a daily basis. I guess that's about 7.5 million liters per day. And folks thought that, well, we've been able to solve this problem. Then we had the issue with the petrol subsidy money being paid, and that the government says there's no further subsidy. Some monies are being saved by the Nigerian government from previous regime of subsidies. So it looks like, well, we've been able to put this storm behind us, and we're now coasting to a new market, a new regime where scarcity will be a thing of the past, perhaps coming going to come in a long term from now, not as soon as we're having it. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this came through. And the story out on the street was that this was due largely to lack of adequate supply of this product via the NNPC, which is the main importer of this product. So there were talks about whether the Nigerian government will have to give more crude under the swap arrangement to the companies that are doing this swap on behalf of the Nigerian government to get finished product in.
The NNPC over the weekend, on social media, on Twitter specifically, actually said they're taking delivery of 4 more cargoes of premium spirit, which is about 180 million liters. So how quickly does this come out from the NNPC to the distributors? Because the marketers are saying they haven't gotten any supply. But the NNPC says it's taking stock, so how quickly will the stock get to the suppliers?
If you look at 180 million liters, what we consume on a daily basis, according to some, is about 44 million liters. So 180 million liters looks like a drop in the ocean as far as petrol consumption in Nigeria is concerned. And again, you look at the recent weeks, Harriet, as well, when you find very serious downside to electricity supply because the discos and the gencos are, well, at the barricades, as it were, with the Labour and the National Assembly over the increase in tariffs to about 40–45% at some level between residential and commercial. So technically we have a problem here because there's a shortfall there from the electricity, so folks would have to consume more. I consume more on a daily basis, running generators, days, hours on end. So that means I go more to the petrol stations to buy petrol to fuel the generator. And if you add that to businesses, that will mean you have more pressure. So whatever volume is coming in via the NNPC will have to be up very quickly, because the electricity, which would augment the number of hours which we use petrol, has increased because of the decline in megawatts. And of course, we don't know what really is going on. The pipelines still being vandalized. The NNPC has to be on top of that particular issue, with all the talks in the months ago when the new NNPC chief came in about using drones, using the entire apparatus of the military, the Navy, the Air Force and the Nigerian Army. And they've talked together. We've seen that on television, in the news. Whether that is coming through now or not is yet to be seen, but it looks like the bad guys are still in big business and they're able to shut Nigeria down, quote and unquote.
So take us through what some of those oil and gas stocks we track here on the program finished off at on Friday.
Last week, if you go to those guys, and you find that as soon as you have this scarcity coming through, you find how investors will react to this stock starting from today. But this was why we finished off on Friday, when the number of folks were just getting to realize the latest petrol scarcity that we're in. Oando was in the news again because of the energy resources subsidiary that was listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Oando shares on the Nigerian market. Remember, Oando Nigeria is listed in Lagos and in Johannesburg, 320, down 2.14%. The volume very strong, 4.574 million ordinary shares. What we got over the weekend was that the shareholders of Oando Energy Resources met in Vancouver, in British Columbia territory, and they agreed to sell the minority shares in Oando Energy Resources of the company listed on Toronto Stock Exchange back to Oando Nigeria PLC, which is the parent company. 69.15% of the total issued and outstanding common shares will be taken back. 540.46 million votes were cast by shareholders, and that gives 100% approval for these shares to be brought back into Oando Nigeria and get the parent company back on track following its 2014 and 2015 very dismal performance. 145 billion naira loss Oando Nigeria reported in 2014. So Oando is trying to claw back these minority shares. Of course, since the shareholders have voted at this extraordinary general meeting, it has to get the approval of the authorities at the British Columbia. They will have to delist Oando Energy Resources from Toronto Stock Exchange, the TSX, and get the approval of the Securities and Exchange Commission in Nigeria and the FSA in South Africa as well, that controls the Johannesburg, the JSE group, called the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. That's as far as Oando was concerned. Look at Mobil, another major retailer, up by 0.33% on Friday. The only stock in the green, but the big boy in the exploration and production company segment of the market, Seplat, we're talking about Seplat Petroleum, 340 at the heels of 40 Oil, which is the biggest boy in the group, 342 naira per share. Seplat 340 up by 3.03%. Investors still very bullish on this stock because of the two new oil blocks that it got after a Supreme Court judgment and meeting its exploration production figures for 2015, reporting more than 84 million naira, or sorry, I beg your pardon, $84 million as operating profit for the financial year just ended. Then if you look at the sector in summary, you're looking at 0.6%. That sector is better than the broader stock exchange, around 16% in the red. The oil and gas stocks, 4.2% in the green. Price to earnings, 30.7. Dividend yield unchanged until we get some new earnings in the box from the folks like MRS, Oando, Mobil, Total, and of course, a full year from Seplat. The rest, Harriet, is what we've been chewing as far as the oil and gas, oil industry is concerned. Of course, the president is back from Saudi Arabia, a 1 week
Yes, it's shot of diplomacy.
Yes, the oil diplomacy is there. He's talking more about cooperation, enhanced and coordinated relationship between the big boys. Nigeria is now putting his feet firmly in the Middle East as the destination. He hasn't, from all we've heard since President Buhari took over, he hasn't really talked to the, and we don't have that in the news, perhaps that has happened behind closed doors. He hasn't talked to the big boys in Europe and the United States as far as the oil is concerned. He's made it very open and clear, and via the group managing director of the NNPC, Ibeka Chiko, that he's talking with the Middle East guys. So Nigeria is aligning itself along that corridor with the big oil boys, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the rest of them. So we know where we are right now as far as this relationship is concerned. Because when it comes to the big fight within the OPEC, the Middle East guys hold the ace.
Oh, yes, they usually do. But then do you think that these conversations that the president is having with the big boys in the Middle East is going to have any impact on oil prices? Because that's frankly what he's trying to say. Let's try to bring, this oil prices to a more realistic level. How do you think that will play out?
Well, it will take time to see. Saudi Arabia needs as many friends and to be able
allies.
And allies to keep the big bear. That's Russia. Putin's Russia in check, which is the big best boy within the non-OPEC member states. Then you have Venezuela on his knees, as it were. Brazil is dealing with a lot of corruption with Petrobras and what have you. So those guys are a little bit weak. So Nigeria is trying to find its position itself within the new world of oil as we have it, where glut is there, oversupply is there, fair thy neighbor, you don't know who's going to do whatever next. Iran is back in the game. Iraq is also in the business. The big field of oil in the Middle East is where it is happening right now. Ara, just look at it. With Iran here, with Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar here, you have the big boys in there. Yes, the Americans are still a force to reckon with when it comes to the number of rigs that is still functioning, as well as the shale gas. But again, the Middle East is still where the backbone of oil is. When crises happen in the Middle East, most times you've got to be in the good books and be friends to those guys. So it's not out of place, therefore, for the president to spend 5 or 6 nights sleeping in the Middle East, trying to be very cozy with the kings and princes and the oil, what do you call them again? The oil sheiks. Yeah, the oil sheiks. Yes, you got it. The sheiks.
You know, Bosin, you and I, we're friends, you know. You know we're friends. So when we're talking about this oil business, don't forget, we are friends.
Yes, we're
and I'm a very close ally.
We're close allies. So see, if I spend 5 days sleeping in your house or in your country,
I don't have light, Bosin. It's the same thing you're facing that I'm facing. I don't have light. I don't have petrol to run my generator either. So everybody just sits pretty and looks for the closest thing to fan yourself.
Yeah, I think the president is back now, and I think he has a lot on in his inbox to deal with. I'm sure his inbox will be very, very high. But I think one of the first things he's dealing with will have to be this petrol scarcity. He's dealt with one issue, really, the 5,000 naira. So some folks who are unemployed...
Oh, yes. We will get back to that 5,000 naira matter in the course of the week. But, Bosin, thank you so much for coming on. Just before I let you go, oil prices. Brent crude is actually down about 0.54%, trending at $34.91. So it's clawing back and going towards $35, but not looking too pretty this morning.
Well, if you look at where the big story is coming from, there are still concerns out there about the latest economic data. It's the end of the month again, don't forget. Yeah. So there will be a bit of these adjustments. But you get a clearer picture as we get to the rest of the week about where oil price is heading. These issues will continue to be there. We have a new level, as it were, which is around 30, 34. It's not likely we'll do $20 a barrel unless the president of North Korea decides to shoot something into the skies again.
My fingers are crossed on that one. I will not hold my breath because anything can happen. But thank you so much for coming through.
Pleasure.
So let's chew on that later on after the show. But coming up in just a moment, we'll be talking about consumers protection and talking to the Director General, Consumer Protection Council, on consumer protection in Nigeria. Stay with us.